Welcome everybody to episode 1 of our podcast, where we'll be discussing our initial thoughts about each episode of The Last of Us, which premiered tonight on HBO. I'm here today with Sister Fate.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
So Sister Fate hasn't played the game. I have played the game. So we're just going to get started by getting her perspective, given that she hasn't played the video game before. What are your initial thoughts about the first episode?
Well, the show looks very interesting. It looks like, number one, they put a good, decent budget into it. The actors, I know them from the main ones from Game of Thrones, Pedro Pascal, I believe, and Bella Ramsey. So I know that they're both great actors. I was kind of skeptical about Ellie just because other people were, but I don't really know that much about it. I just know that there's, I've seen little clips on YouTube before of, the gameplay, so I don't really know everything. I don't really know the storyline, but I do know that Ellie had a specific look, so I was kind of interested that they had picked and cast Bella Ramsey as Ellie. Knowing that she's a great actress, I figure, okay, she can pull it off, I'm sure. And so far, it looks like she is. So I am looking forward to seeing more of this show and kind of understanding, the world. What has happened 20 years after the initial outbreak, I guess you can call it.
I was a little bit concerned, too, about the person that they chose to play Ellie, but after seeing her in this first episode, she did a fantastic job, and she really did capture the spirit of Ellie, and even in the few scenes that they did have with her, because she wasn't as prominently featured in this episode, they were doing a lot of backstory, which was really important, especially with Joel's daughter and understanding what happened to Joel's daughter. But the moments that we did have with Bella Ramsey as Ellie did make you feel like, okay, this is Ellie. You could see how smart Ellie is, which you learn about in the game. You could see how strong she is. One thing that I'd never really picked up on during the game, though, was that she was placed into a Fedra school by Marlene and grew up learning how to be a soldier. That's not something that was covered very much in the game, or maybe it's something that I overlooked. But yeah.
So Fedra is the government. Is that what it is? Or is some type of entity or corporation or what?
Fedra is military control. So you notice that in the series there was the Fireflies who were quote unquote fighting for democracy or fighting for people to be more free. And then there's Fedra that came in to establish military control to try to keep the infection from killing everyone. So the idea was that they had to control the movement of human beings, especially within these quarantine zones, to keep people from spreading the infection to all of mankind.
Okay, so they're under some sort of martial law, and this group of people, do we know or will we know possibly who's in charge of Fedra?
It doesn't work that way because of...
Or do we care?
Well, I think there's definitely... I wouldn't even say that there's a government. It's more of a military dictatorship. But if you think about how big the United States is, in a situation like the one that Ellie and Joel are living in a time like that, it would be really hard for there to be a centralized government with one main point of control. So what happens a lot in the game is that in every place that you move to, you'll see little communities of people that are willingly submitting to some type of way of living, whether it be a military dictatorship, whether it be the rebellion of the Fireflies, and we'll see other communities as Ellie and Joel travel throughout the United States.
Okay. So these enclaves of groups of people, Fedra's not at every single enclave.
Fedra is not just in Boston. But no, they're not. So as they travel, there'll be lots of different types of communities. As they mentioned in the show, there'll be slavers. There'll be people that are... There are different groups who have different types. And I would say
different agendas.
And there's a personality or a feeling that you get from each group.
Okay.
Yeah.
can you explain, like, this whole smuggling operation? Because it seems like Joel has some type of connection on the outside, possibly his brother, and they use the radio, I guess, to communicate?
Yes. So, as you can see in the show, money as we know it now no longer really has much value. Resources are the currency that people deal in, whether it be food or weapons or clothing, shoes, very basic things, and also like any type of drugs in the game, first aid, even drugs that people would typically use for recreational purposes. Anything that a person would need to survive and live, those things replace money. So, as you can imagine, human beings have this tendency to exploit that. So, different groups will try to either barter with other people for resources. Some people will try to steal. Other people will literally kill for resources, depending on how desperate they get. So, yes, there are smuggling operations for people to get the things that they need in order to survive.
Okay.
Yeah. Was there anything for you that stood out about the nature of the infection or anything that was surprising to you or?
Yeah, well, the first scene, with the scientists kind of talking, that was very eye-opening. So that kind of explained what happened. And then I guess I'm hoping at least that you'll see more of the, I guess you call them clickers or whatever, the people who have gotten bitten and who are kind of evolving. So I'm interested in seeing that, and I'm interested in kind of understanding a little bit more of the science, but especially about Ellie, because it appears that she's been infected, but she's evidently not showing symptoms, I guess, so to speak. So that's very interesting, and it's kind of reminiscent of Children of Men, possibly.
Definitely.
The movie.
Definitely. Ellie's immunity is one of the most important through lines in the game. And in this show, it's going to be even more important. Because in the game, obviously, you have different missions and you're fighting and you're engaging in a lot of fun activities that you would play like during a video game. But in the show, it's going to be even more important because you'll get to really see. It's funny how Ellie's immunity is more important for Joel, because you get to see what he is ultimately going to need to try to protect more than anything else, because Ellie could potentially be the key to saving all of humanity, which is strange, and this isn't giving anything away, but when I was playing the game, I would always wonder, are there other people like Ellie out there? That's not something that has ever been answered. So that's really important. Her immunity is probably one of the most suspenseful things about the story, because obviously she can't die. Otherwise, the consequences are so much greater than just her dying.
And how old is she supposed to be?
That's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up. In the game, the way I remember the game, she was very young. I want to say like between the ages of 9 and 12. And Joel kind of raised her into becoming a teenager and a young woman. And he was the one who taught her how to survive. He was the one who taught her how to use a weapon and how to get through life in this post-apocalyptic world. So learning that she was placed into this military school by Marlene is definitely not something that I believe was covered at all in the video game. So that part was kind of interesting. I thought she was like in an orphanage. Like, her backstory is definitely not something that is fleshed out as much as Joel's in the game.
I might need to watch again, because I'm not sure how she got infected. Did they say?
They didn't say that part either.
Or how she got captured? Maybe it was buffering at the time. I don't know. Maybe we missed some dialogue, but I'm very interested in kind of the origin of her infection.
Yes.
And trying to, see what type of entities might not want her to survive, I guess. I'm sure there's some government conspiracy or, perhaps. But I do have a question. Are you, just based on this first episode, are you feeling confident that it's not going to completely go away from the game, or do you care, or were you expecting it to go away from the game based on the fact that it is a series?
One thing that I heard so many people say in the non-spoiler reviews was that this was one of the most, if not the most successful attempt at capturing the essence of a story of a video game, because they didn't really go that far away from the source material. But the one thing that I will say is that they're filling in these weird gaps, like the whole backstory about Ellie being in the military school, fleshing out Tess'S character, Marlene's character, connecting Marlene to Tommy, which is not something that I don't think they did that very much in the actual video game. So
I'm sorry, Tommy?
Tommy is Joel's brother. Remember?
Oh, that's right. Okay, sorry.
No worries. So I knew in the game that Tommy and Joel were not together and that Tommy and they had split up, but Marlene's connection to Tommy was not something that stood out in the video game very much. So they are doing some things that the video game loyalists who love The Last of Us that I didn't know from actually playing the video game. But I will say this to answer your question in short, they are taking their time. Like, the thing about playing a video game is it takes time. This game, if you did a full completionist, would be like 60 hours. So they are moving through this story kind of at the same like pace that you would have in the actual video game, which is setting this apart from like Halo, from The Witcher, which is respectfully a little bit of a corny show. So I love that. And they are staying true to the source material, for sure.
Well, maybe they didn't do the whole Joel raising her thing so far because they kind of already showed him raising his daughter.
Yeah.
A little bit. So maybe that would have been too repetitive. Plus maybe they will, progress over years in this first season, or, I don't know. But so far it's been a big time jump for 20 years. So it's very interesting. I'm a big sci-fi apocalyptic type fan, so this will be fun to explore.
I agree. Do you have any final thoughts? What are some of the most interesting things in terms of looking forward to episode 2 that you're looking forward to do?
Well, it looked like at the end there was like some type of weird clicker or alien or whatever on top of a building. So they're very close to, they're in that contamination type zone. So I'm interested in seeing what's out there now that we kind of already seen what life is like within the walls of the city or whatever
the QZ,
the
quarantine zone.
So I'm interested in that, and I'm interested in seeing kind of why Ellie is the way she is. She doesn't seem like a typical little girl.
Yeah.
So, clearly she's wise beyond her years, and, she's smart because I guess she was breaking codes and doing things like that. So, yeah, I'm interested.
Same. I mean, I think one of the things that I am looking forward to a lot is seeing how they got there. So I am hoping, like you said, that they kind of go back in time at some point in those 20 years so we can see Ellie grow up a little bit, understand how she became a survivalist, essentially. It makes sense, though, if you were born into that world, you would not have a normal childhood, especially if your parents wanted you to survive. Like from day one, they would have to protect you, and from the time you were old enough to understand, you would have to learn what you needed to do to actually survive. So I'm hoping we get to see some of that. They mentioned Riley, her friend. I'm hoping that we get to see what their life was like before Ellie ended up getting infected, so to speak. So yeah, I am so excited for this. Everything that everyone said about how good the show is, it definitely came through for me, and I will be tuning in every week. But
same.
Those are our initial thoughts. We appreciate everyone who's taken the time to enjoy the podcast. Tune in every week. It'll be nice, short, and sweet, just like it was this week, where we will just talk about our perception of that episode. And don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section. We would love to know what your experience was watching the show.
Yeah, let us know if you feel that the show is going to stay true to the game, or do you feel like it's going to get a little bit convoluted, like sometimes these Hollywood productions kind of do. I have a feeling they're on the right track, and they're on the right platform. HBO. I just wish that they would get a few more servers so people could stream in peace without it being so
that was horrible.
Buffering and yeah. I mean, it's definitely a popular show, so they should hopefully turn on a couple more servers for that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's not like this every week where we literally had to restart the app 2 or 3 times in order to get through the whole show. But that's it for us this week, guys. Again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts. Let us know what you think about the episode. Enjoy your week. We're out.